Ladies and gentlemen, sports fans alike, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. One of the couple, two, three best podcasts around. So sit back, grab yourself a cold one and a Polish sausage, park your keister in the French room, and listen to Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
In Chicago, you know that all sports rock. The Bears, Hawks, Bulls, Cubs, and Sox. Pick your favorite, you can choose, as long as the Packers lose. For everything you need to know, it's Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Bill Swerski, Sports Talk Chicago. This is your host, Sean. This episode, we are going to be talking about the Bulls needing to look in the mirror, the Blackhawks hitting their strides, and we'll be talking about the defensive tackles in this year's NFL Draft. But before we start, as usual, we are going to talk about the Rockford Ice Hogs, our sponsor, the Rockford Ice Hogs. If you're not familiar with the Rockford Ice Hogs, they are the AHL minor league team of the Chicago Blackhawks. That means that you get to see the future stars of tomorrow, today, located just 90 minutes from the city limits in Rockford, Illinois at the BMO Harris Bank Center, Rockford Ice Hogs, with family-friendly, affordable prices starting at just $7 per ticket. Next home game is Friday, February 12th at 7 p.m. versus the Milwaukee Admirals. Make sure you check them out at icehogs.com. Tell them Swerski Sports sent you. Now, if you're not familiar with this show, there's always new people listening, so forgive me for the people that are avid listeners. If you're not familiar with this show, we're by the fans for the fans show, and we like to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. If you listen to the show, we want your voice heard. Whether that means you email me a question, you tweet me a question, Facebook me a question, however you get me a question, I'll make sure to answer it in the air. If you have a comment, I will talk about that on the air as well. So make sure you hit us up on our social media, Twitter at Swerski Sports, Facebook.com/Swerski Sports, SwerskiSports.com. And unlike many of the major radio shows in the Chicagoland area that talk sports, we don't hate our fans. Even if you have something that you disagree with me or you think my opinion is incorrect, that's perfectly fine. We all have differences of opinion, and none of us are perfect. So I would still like to talk to you. Hell, if you want to be on the air, come on over. All right, so let's jump right in. I'm going to talk about something that's really annoying. And this is a first segment of first time I'm doing a segment called Jeremy Roenick WTF.
What the
This moment goes out to the Chicago Bulls players. We have a team that's quickly plummeting. That this team was put together to win a championship. When this team couldn't win a championship, clearly it was Tom Thibodeau's fault for working everybody too hard, and they're too exhausted come the playoffs. And so they bring in Fred Hoiberg, and Fred Hoiberg is going to infuse this team with offense, and they're going to run more, and they're going to be competitive and be able to compete for an NBA championship. Well, they have a new coach, they got rid of the old coach, and they're still having the same problems. You have Jimmy Butler, who's telling them, the media, that, well, the team needs to be coached harder, the coach needs to work harder. And you have Paul Gasol, who's saying, my teammates need to dig deeper. And you have Derrick Rose, I don't know what's going on, we're trying hard. My comment is, don't you have a single mirror in that locker room? A single mirror. Paul Gasol is part of the problem. He plays no defense. He doesn't show up on the defensive side of the court. You have Derrick Rose as part of the problem. He's playing much better than he has, but he doesn't have a rapport with his teammates, turns the ball over too much, and doesn't push the pace of the offense like he's supposed to. Jimmy Butler is part of the problem because he can't decide if he's a defensive player, offensive player, and he won't work within the offensive system that's being implemented. You have Niko Mirotic, who's part of the problem. You have Tony Snell, who's part of the problem. You have Doug McDermott, part of the problem. This team is the problem. The team is the problem. They don't play a team brand of basketball. They don't play hard-nosed. They don't listen to what the coaches have to say, and they still can't figure out why it is they can't win. This Bulls team absolutely, positively has zero chance of winning an NBA title this year. None whatsoever. Sure, they're going to make the playoffs. Their conference is atrocious. I haven't used that word in a while on the show, and I used to use it all the time. But that conference is atrocious. They should be able to waltz in there. I think me and you and 3 of your friends could be at least compete for that 8th spot in the Eastern Conference playoffs. This is not a good conference, and the Bulls are going to make the playoffs. What are they going to do in the playoffs? Absolutely nothing. They're not going to win the first round, I doubt. And even if they, some miracle, get by everybody, including Cleveland, they have no chance versus either San Antonio or Golden State, whoever wins that matchup. They have no chance. Hell, they have no chance against any of the teams from the West to come out of that. It doesn't matter. This Bulls team can't do it. And it's really frustrating to watch this team and to know that they can't compete and they're not good enough. I really don't want to talk too much about them. It's really infuriating. And now to top it all off is they lose Jimmy Butler for an unspecified amount of time because he's got a knee sprain. Luckily, it's not an ACL or an MCL like Derrick Rose had, but still, this is going to be a lingering problem for him. And it was in a loss to the Denver Nuggets, who they should have beat. And they're using the excuse, well, Jimmy Butler got hurt. That's what they lost. Jimmy Butler went out, and they were still up by 18 points. And they blow the lead. They blow the lead. So they built up a big lead when they built up a lead when Jimmy Butler was out, but they blew it late in the game. Blew an 18-point lead. This is not a team that has a competitive fire to close out a game. They don't have a tough-nosed attitude. This is a soft team that doesn't know how to play well together. They're basically done. Done. And that's all I'm going to say about the Bulls because I'm so infuriated by them. I want to switch it over to the Blackhawks a little bit. This is a team they've already got that competitive spirit. They've got that killer instinct, and they will, they can play with anybody. So case in point is they've had some rough games this season, and they've going into the All-Star game, you have a really tired team that just needs a break. They played basically almost every single night, or at least every other night. And they lost some games that they should have won. And I spoke about it after the first game with the Dallas Stars, is that I thought they would have a tough matchup if they played the Stars in the playoffs, because Dallas matches their speed, and the Blackhawks really haven't had another team that just matches their speed and had veteran players that could match their experience as well, like Oduya and Sharp. But really, going back and thinking about that game after you seeing this one, is it must have been another one of those games where the Blackhawks were just in a funk, because Dallas looked good in this game. They got their shots. Corey Crawford just stood tall and didn't let anything go in. And the Blackhawks just took it to them and took it to Dallas in Dallas and beat them bad. It was not even a competitive game. You have this team that's firing on all cylinders right now, and if they play like this for the rest of the season, or at least in the playoffs, is somebody's going to have a tall order ahead of them if they think they're going to win a 7-game series against the Blackhawks. one of the biggest keys of winning a Stanley Cup final is having a hot goalie. And right now, Corey Crawford is playing lights out. He looks great out there. He's tracking the puck well. His historic weakness has been glove side and going glove side high, and he's even getting those well. Like I said, he's tracking the puck well. He looks more comfortable in the net. He looks more athletic. He looks stronger. He's just seeing everything really well, and that's great to see because they're going to need him come playoffs. You have that second line that just is absolutely filthy, and as good as we all knew Patrick Kane was, we all kept saying, what happens if you get him a second-line center, a real second-line center? And last year you gave him Brad Richards, who's 102 years old, and a shell of his former self, and Patrick Kane's, they win the Stanley Cup. This year, you give him Artem Anisimov, who's a really good hockey player, and a true second-line center. And suddenly, what do you have? You have Patrick Kane looking like an MVP. He might win the scoring title, might win the MVP. He is absolutely a stud, and he's got talent around him. That second line of Panarin, Anisimov, and Kane is just a well-oiled machine, and they just know night in, night out are consistently good. And we've said that before, said it again, is that they've been the only consistent line going for the whole season, but you've got that top line with Toews looks like he's refiguring out who he is and becoming old Toews again. And a lot of people have talked bad about Toews and have said that he just doesn't look like himself this year. But if you look at his numbers are still really good, and he's one of the best two-way centers in hockey. You put him with Marian Hossa, and now they've got Shaw in there, who was apparently the missing link and the key to drive that top line, and they're playing well, and you're finally figuring out a rotation in the third and fourth lines. It looks great. You're seeing crisp passes. You're seeing entries that are much better. You have, that they're keeping the puck in the offensive zone more. Before they played a lot where the other team had the puck in an offensive position, an offensive end of the ice for long periods of time, and those roles have reversed. And I think a lot of it has to do with they've figured out what their defensive rotation is and who their pairings are. Duncan Keith is healthy and back to full form. Trevor Van Riemsdyk is looking much better and more comfortable out there. You figured out who your last pair is. You get rid of wow, I'm just having an old man moment. The guy they got rid of that they got in the Sharp trade, that they flipped for Rob Scuderi. But anyways, they get rid of him, and they start to figure out who it is they are on defense, what they do well, and you have Crawford playing well, the defense playing well in front of him, and you're giving them more time of possession on offense, and they're using that speed they have, they're using that talent they have, and they're just taking it to everybody else. It's just really unfair. So you have this team that's a well-oiled machine, and they're 3/4 of the way through the season. It's like 24 games left or so, maybe, like 3/4 of the way through the season, and barring any sort of catastrophic injury, I don't see the Blackhawks fading and being a team that has to struggle. They're going to keep up this pace, and it's going to be really tough for somebody to beat them in a series going forward. What are some other Blackhawks things I want to talk about is, the rumor is the Blackhawks might be getting the Winter Classic again next year, which would be really awesome, except that it's in Busch Stadium because and I don't want to beat up on other teams' fans, but I don't know why they're giving it to St. Louis, because those fans are terrible. The Cardinals fans are smug, arrogant jerks. The Blues fans are obnoxious. And Rams fans are whiny. And we lost our team. Well, go to the games and support them. But the Blackhawks are looking like to get the 2017 Winter Classic in Busch Stadium. And that's going to be fantastic to see. There's no love lost between those two teams. And St. Louis is close enough where I'm going to try to get off and make it down to that game because I went to the Winter Classic when I was at Wrigley Field, and I had a blast, even though it was Arctic. And I wasn't necessarily a fan of the company I was with, but I had a blast, and it was a really good time, and I would love to go down and see another one. What else do you have? You have, in the game the other night against the Coyotes, you had Jonathan Toews netted his sixth, I think it was the sixth overtime game-ending goal, which makes him the leader in the NHL. He's like, I think I've said it before and I say it again, is if Jonathan Toews would have been on the Titanic, everybody would have got home, got off on the boats in a single file line, and all had a quarter to make a phone call to get picked up on the shore. That's what a good, confident, leader he is, and he just doesn't feel pressure. He just goes out there when most people will crack under the pressure, he just goes in there and delivers a performance, and that's what he does again. Just, he's got ice in his veins. And this is after coming back from serving a completely stupid mandatory 1-game suspension. So he was ill, couldn't play in the All-Star game, so they suspend him a game. That's just asinine. That rule doesn't make any sense. I love the NHL and I love the game, but the top brass of the NHL need to figure out what it is that they're doing, because they don't really have a clue what the fans want and quite how to give it to them. And this suspension business is silly. You're hurting the product by putting, if Toews was feeling well enough, he would have played. The All-Star game is a blast. Look what happened it was a good show, and the NHL All-Star game is the best out of, I take that back. Baseball's got a good All-Star game, but hockey's better than NBA, and hockey's better than the NFL as far as their All-Star game. It's a really fun watch. And Jonathan Toews, I'm sure, would have been there had he not been ill. So whatever, NHL, you just do what you're going to do. That's why you're going to have a guy that you try to keep off the roster be your All-Star MVP. And then I guess two more points I wanted to make is Artemi Panarin, the rookie out of Russia. The seasons he's been used to playing are much, much, much shorter than what the NHL is. And the NHL plays 82 games a season, which is a lot of games. It's a brutal, long schedule. As a fan, I love it because you get to see so much hockey during the season. But as a player, it just gets daunting very fast. You have to just be not only conditioned physically, but you got to be conditioned mentally to be able to handle that stress of that long season. And Artemi Panarin's coming in here, and as a rookie, there's some worry that he's going to be able to hold up for the whole season, and he's been an important cog for the Blackhawks, especially on that second line. So when asked about it, he says he's not worried about the length of the NHL season. He feels that he's in good enough shape to continue where he's going, and he's got experienced teammates to help along the way. So hopefully that's the case. That could be one hurdle one hiccup that causes some trouble for the Blackhawks, is that Panarin just can't hold up to the stress and the strain of a long NHL season. And then one final thing I want to talk about is, I said it before the All-Star game, is I'm not worried about these losses that prior to the All-Star game. This is a tired team. They just need some rest, and they'll be fine after the All-Star break when they get basically a week off from doing stuff. And lo and behold, they come back out, and there you go. The Blackhawks are on fire, just lighting it up. Going down to Dallas and whipping Dallas, who's was hot on their trail as far as the record goes. But this is a very good team, and there's an experienced team and a veteran team that have won, and they know how to win. I don't worry too much if there's lows in the regular season, because it's a long season, it's a grueling season, and these guys, they're going to have lulls in their game. But once the playoffs come, this team turns it on and hyper focuses and is ready to go. So don't worry about that. Lastly, I want to talk about the defensive tackles in the NFL draft. If you are new to this show, what we do is, this is the reason the show started, I wanted to talk about the NFL draft and who I thought would be good fits for the Bears, and be able to kind of break down some of the players that were in the draft and kind of analyze them for myself. Is you've got guys like Mel Kiper and Mike Mayock and the other guy, I can't think of his name. They're these draft gurus, and they talk about guys and what they think of guys. But the issue is that if you find a guy that's coming into the draft that's from a top flight school, you're going to find people that like his play and think he'll do well in the NFL. You'll find people that don't like his play and don't think he'll make it in the NFL. You'll find people that like the way he played in college but doesn't think it'll transition to the NFL. So everybody's got a different opinion. And if you go back and look, Mike Mayock, Todd McShay, and Mel Kiper, they've all been way wrong a lot of times and had guys that they thought should have been higher be complete busts, and guys that they thought got drafted too high be Pro Bowlers. So it's a real crapshoot, and all you can do is look for traits that you see. And I've been doing this for a long time as a hobby, and I wanted to take it to the air. So every week we break down one position. 2 weeks ago we did the fullbacks and the running backs. Last week we did wide receivers. This week we're going to do defensive tackles, and next week we do cornerbacks. Cornerbacks are my favorite. I've usually do the best at cornerbacks, but we'll skip to defensive tackles this week. And I can't do every defensive tackle that's eligible for the draft. I just don't have the time for that. I pick a handful of like 10, 12 guys that are the top guys. And if there's somebody I missed that you really want to know, let me know. I'll talk about him. If the Bears draft somebody and I haven't covered them, I will absolutely go back and watch film and discuss them. So no frets there. So let's jump right into it. The first guy I'm going to talk about is Ashawn Robinson, 6'3", 312 out of Alabama. A lot of people talk about him as being the best defensive tackle in the draft. I really don't get the hype. I don't see him being that special of a player on tape. He's a powerful guy. He's really stout, tough to move, but he's really, really slow off the snap. Zero pass rushing moves. Stands upright too much. He gets taken by single blocks way too much. He does show flashes of athleticism, but he's not the package that I would want to take a top pick like that. And he's going to go in the first round. I don't see him as a first round talent. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't really see it. He's going to have to get much better in a heartbeat, and if he's going to make it on my draft board that high. Next up is Andrew Billings, 6'1", 310 out of Baylor. Again, he is an enormous man. He just looks enormous out there. He's got fantastic use of his hands, sheds the blocks really well, but he looks too big. He's top heavy. He needs to lose some weight, I think, to be more effective. He's not very quick off the ball. I think losing some weight will do wonders for him there. But my notes are that he's a really powerful man who's he's going to be tough to block. He may need to drop a few pounds to be a better player, too bulky. So Andrew Billings, I think, is worthy of a first round in my opinion, but somebody's going to have to work with him to watch his weight. They say he's 6'1", 310, but he looks much bigger than that. I think he's got to trim down a little bit to be quicker and faster off the ball. Next up is Robert Nkemdiche, 6'3", 296 out of Ole Miss. This guy is quick off the ball. He's got powerful legs. He's good pass rusher from the interior, but he lacks multiple moves, and he needs to be able to use his hands better. He lets guys get into his body a little bit too much. If you're a defensive tackle, you don't want to let the offensive lineman get into your body, because once he's into your body, it's hard to break him off. It makes his job much easier. You want to be able to use your hands. So a lot of times these guys will study MMA or all these different kinds of martial arts to be able to use their hands better. So when you get your hands better, is the offensive lineman comes in for the block, you push your hands off of him, redistribute his weight, and you can use his momentum against him. If he gets in on you and puts his weight on you, he can drive you and do whatever you want, unless you're absolutely just a mountain powerful man. So he needs to be able to use his hands better, and that's a skill that he's going to learn. I'm not worried about that. I think he's going to be a really good 3 technique in this league. He's very talented, but he needs to learn some more sophisticated pass rushing moves, in my opinion. He relies too much on quickness and his powerful legs. He needs to get a stronger upper body, I think, as well. He can drive people with his leg strength, but he needs a stronger upper body. I think Robert Nkemdiche is going to be a good player, but again, he's got some work to do. He's not a slam dunk, I don't think. There's Jaron Reed, 6'3", 311 out of Alabama. I put in my notes, basically see Ashawn Robinson. He looks, it's like looking in a mirror up there. I really had to go back and check player numbers. So what I do is I go through and I watch game film. I watch not highlights. I watch every single snap that player is involved in a game. Whether or not the ball went to the other side of the field or not, I watch every single snap that they were on the field. And I had to double check the player number because I kept thinking when I was looking at Jaron Reed that I was looking at Ashawn Robinson, because they're very similar guys. Strong, tough to move, but slow off the snap and gets taken out by a single block too much. I'm not that high on Jaron Reed. Next up is Kenny Clark, 6'2", 310 out of UCLA. He's got really good leverage. He's powerful. He's quick. But he, again, needs to use his hands better. Needs to develop a better swim move than he has. But watching him, I love Kenny Clark. He's really dominant, and he's going to drive a single blocker back. So if you got one guy one-on-one with him, Kenny Clark is going to drive him back. He's a powerful guy. I like Kenny Clark a lot. He's going to have to develop some more moves if he's going to be effective in the middle in a lot of systems, but he's got the talent to be a high draft pick, I think. Next up is Sheldon Rankins, 6'2", 304 out of Louisville. He's really fast for a guy that big. He moves his feet. He's got decent leverage, but the eyeball test, and I really, really want to see when they measure him I've got a note, when they do the measurements at the combine, I really want to know what his arm length is going to be, because it looks like he's got short arms. It looks like he's a T-Rex out there. And that's a problem for a defensive lineman, because if you let a guy get into you like that or lock into you, you're not going to be able to, if you got these little tiny T-Rex arms, you're not going to be able to use your hands effectively to fight him off and get around him. He gets caught in blocks a little too much and needs to learn to shed blocks better. And I think part of that is his short arms. He's a real competitor. He's a fiery guy, high motor guy, no quit in him. But it scares me a little bit when I see how much he gets locked into blocks by single blockers. It's a little scary for me to put him so high on a draft board. Next up is Austin Johnson, 6'4", 323 out of Penn State. This guy sheds blocks really well. He's fairly fast, got decent quickness, but he crumbles under double teams. Once you put a double team on him, it's just like it's like an off switch. He needs to work on his strength. He quits on plays too much. And that's not good either. I think if he decides he wants to put in the work, he could be a real NFL player. I think he can do really well. He has the skills, but I don't know if he really has the heart. And I talk about his strength is whenever you'd have a double team, is a guy that's got good strength and good power in his legs or good quickness can beat that double team, and he just gets locked on and they drive him. And that just means he doesn't have the skills to be able to get out of it and doesn't have the strength to be able to fight off. He needs to work on a few things. Next is Vernon Butler, 6'4", 325 out of Louisiana Tech. He's got great technique, great hands. He will let offensive linemen get into his body too much, and he can stand up straight. If he doesn't get immediate pressure, you watch him stand up. And that's a habit that somebody can break, but it's a bad habit. And he faced lesser competition playing at Louisiana Tech. But to be honest with you, he has the best technique out of any of the defensive linemen I've seen so far on tape. He's a really talented guy, and if he can perform well at the combine, you might have a winner here. Really high motor guy. I like Vernon Butler. The one thing that scares me is just he's played against lower competition, so you're watching him play against lesser guys. You want to see what he can do against the big boys. But I really think that he could be a worker in the NFL. Next, we have Adolphus Washington, 6'4", 297 out of Ohio State. He's got a quick move. He's big. He's got frame to be able to add more weight, which is good. He looks really athletic now. I think he could add on some more weight to be a little stouter. He can't take on the double team, and that's something you learn. Not everybody can do that. But he really has no other moves than a bull move and being quick. I could see him being a 3-4 defensive end. He's got nice production in college, but I wonder whether he was helped by the rest of the D, or did he help the rest of the D be better? That's a big question I have about Adolphus Washington. Chris Jones, 6'5", 308 out of Mississippi State. He's a big guy, but he carries his weight really well. He's powerful. He keeps his hands out. He really doesn't have any great moves. He keeps his he can get his momentum used against him, so where he'll fire out, and he doesn't have the core strength to be able to straighten himself out and reposition. But I do like Chris Jones. I think he can be a big-time player. He just really needs to put in the work and learn some better techniques. He's a guy I like, though. And the last guy I'm going to talk about, unless you guys write in and tell me I'm missing somebody or you want to see somebody, is defensive tackle, is Sheldon Day, 6'1", 286 out of Notre Dame. He's got nice technique. He's got good use of his hands, high motor guy. But he looks like a munchkin out there. He looks so small. And he's not stout at the point of attack. I wish you could put this guy's skills and his motor in somebody else's body. He's just not big or strong enough to play at the next level as a starter, I don't think. So as much as I like the play of Sheldon Day, I don't think he's going to make it as an NFL starting caliber defensive tackle. And summary on this year's crop of defensive tackles is it's a lot of guys that are quick or big, and that's all they do. Not seeing a lot of good swim moves, not seeing a lot of good, these sophisticated pass rushing moves. It's guys that are just going in there and doing their one-trick pony, and that's not really going to fly in the NFL. You're going to have to learn, and you're going to have to get better. Some of these guys, I think, have the skill and the ability to get better, but some of them I don't. I think they might be busts. I think there's going to be a few surprise busts in this draft as defensive tackle. But that's going to do it for this episode. I know this was short. Super Bowl Sunday. I'm trying to do this during halftime to get back to the game. But thank you guys so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe, whether you listen on iTunes, Stitcher, YouTube, however you listen. Subscribe, share with your friends. Give us 5-star reviews, leave comments, and hit us up on social media. Thanks so much. And until next time, bear down.
Cubs win! What a lucky break! The good Lord wants picks the Cubs to win.
We thank Ditka and God for all they have provided.
Cubs win. Cubs win. Cubs win.
Oh, I don't want her, you can have her, she's a Packer fan. She can't fit in my van.
And she looks like
Remember, New Yorkers, smoking crack is not legal on the plains.
Bears 31 to -7.
the Bears. Oh, when the Bears go bearing down.